Hi, and welcome back to the Freedom of Speech video tutorial series. If you were able to stick it out through to the end of part 1 of this series, then you know that I spent my time reformatting the hard drive on my clunker computer and installing a fresh copy of Windows XP with Service Pack 3. So here is a list of the software that I installed after I finished installing the operating system. Is any of this stuff mandatory for Apache to work? I don't think so. It's just something I always add on. Okay, so the goal of this part is to install the Apache Web Server and get our first website working. It won't be a very exciting website unless you're easily impressed, but it'll be a good start, and we all know that you have to crawl before you walk. Now this is the same to-do list that I showed in part 1, and I'll remind you that we aren't going to go down the list in order. Today we will start with step 5, and once we have checked off every item on the list, your website will be available for the whole world to see. Here's a list of the software that we will be downloading and installing in the course of this video series, and as you can see, the Apache Web Server is number 1 on the list. And finally, here is a partial list of some of the websites that we will be visiting during this video series, so let's get started by going to apache.org. On the desktop, I double-click on the blue E to bring up the Internet Explorer, and I have my trusty text file already open on the taskbar so that I am not forced to type the URL into the address bar. Copy, paste, and hit return, and then scroll down to the file that we want to download. There's lots of choices, so make sure you get the right one. I save the file to my desktop so that I can run it immediately after the download is complete. The Apache installation file is only 6 megabytes, which is tiny by today's standards, so it will only take a few seconds to download. After the download is complete, we close out all of the open files on the taskbar, and then I will slide the installation program to the center of the screen so that it can be readily seen. Now I want to pause here for a minute because I know that the idea of running a web server at home is an intimidating thought for most people, and I sympathize with them on that. Network administration must be a complex endeavor because people go to college to learn how to do it. So for those of you who feel intimidated by the installation of a web server, watch carefully because I'm going to do my dead-level best to do it completely wrong. And if I am unable to mess up this Apache web server on purpose, then I really don't think that you'll be able to mess it up by accident. Once the web server is up and running, you can take it just as far as you want to. But if you're content with nothing more than a johnsmith.com website on a clunker computer, I think you will find that you are perfectly capable of acting as your own network administrator. Okay, are you ready to install this thing? Let's do it. Wrong. And then we'll all watch it run just great. We start by double-clicking on the installation file and then click Run. And then Next. We accept the license agreement and then hit Next again. We'll blow right past the README file and hit Next again. Now, in this section, the first thing I'm going to try is to remove all of the default answers and to just install it with blank spaces. So, I erase all of the typewritten answers and hit Next. Well, it didn't like that. Domain name entry cannot be left blank. Okay. Well, if you don't like blanks, what do you think of senseless gibberish? I'll start with a Q on the left-hand side of the keyboard and type 5 letters. Then, I'll start with a P on the right and type 5 letters. An A on the left side of the keyboard and type 5 letters. And an L on the right and type 5 letters. And instead of .com, I'll give them ZZZ. Now we hit Next, 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 and Install. Now, I'm sure that everyone out there is thinking, this guy is totally out of his gourd. So let me explain myself very quickly. The truth is, I don't have the correct answers for those boxes. For example, box 1, the network domain. Well, I don't have a domain name. That was step 1 on the to-do list, and we skipped that step and went straight to step 5. So I guess I could have left the default answers in those boxes, but all of those answers would have been just as wrong as the gibberish that I typed. Although I suspect that everyone out there would be sleeping a lot better with the default choices, no matter how wrong they are. Unfortunately, I don't have time to discuss this issue in any great detail, but I will promise you this. Before this video tutorial series is over, we will all go into the configuration files, and I will show you where that gibberish is located. Then, if you decide that the answers need to be changed so that you can implement the secure socket layers or the virtual hosts or some other advanced feature of the Apache Web Server, then you can swap out all of that gibberish with the correct answers. In the meantime, just sit back and be amazed that this tiny little freeware program installs itself and runs beautifully in spite of your best efforts to sabotage it. I take my hat off to the developers of Apache Web Server. I only wish that the software that other companies are selling could be as resilient as Apache is in the admittedly hostile environment of the Internet. And to think that it's open source. Amazing. Now, unfortunately, I just talked my way right through to the end of the installation. And now I have to take another quick time out to discuss how we're going to test the software. When the Apache crew put this web server together, they included a very simple default website in the package for testing purposes. And that reminds me of the old days, back before cell phones were invented, and everyone in my town was forced to use telephones from the Southern Bell Company. Remember when you got your phone installed, you would look over and see that phone staring at you in stony silence, and you couldn't help but wonder if the phone was really working or not. But there was this special number that you could dial and then hang up the phone and your own phone would ring. It was like calling yourself. And only a very select few people ever knew what that special phone number was, because it was a closely guarded secret, like the password to get into my treehouse. I remember feeling such delight when I dialed that special call myself number. I could never figure out who was happiest, me calling myself or Fido finally catching his tail. Well, here's my big secret, my gift to you. There is also a special number that you can type into the Internet Explorer that allows you to call yourself. So, now that the Apache Web Server is finished installing, we simply type the special call home number into the address bar of the Internet Explorer, and if the Apache Web Server is working, the default website will stand up and say hello. So here we go, 127.0.0.1, and voila, it works! Your first website. Congratulations! Actually, this call home number is so important, I'm going to save it on my favorites toolbar. I can already see that I will be calling myself a lot in the future, and I'm going to want to have it in a convenient place. Now let me play the role of devil's advocate, because what we just witnessed does seem awfully suspicious in a world full of internet fraud. I typed some heretofore unknown external IP address into the Internet Explorer, and some unknown website pops up that says it works. How do I know that that IP address that I just typed is my own IP address? After all, that website could just as easily be on the other side of the world. Or what if 127.0.0.1 is actually the IP address of apache.org? Couldn't Apache put that same website on one of their servers to make it seem like the one that I just installed is working? I raised some valid points, and luckily for me, I have answers for all my own objections. I love it when I win arguments with myself. I just wish I was that lucky with my wife. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to reach around behind my computer and disconnect the Cat5 cable from the Internet. Then I will know that the Internet Explorer is not accessing some IP address on the Internet. In addition, I'm going to replace the default website that came with the Apache Web Server with my own personal John Smith website. Then I will know for sure that it is truly being served up by my own web server. So I was thinking, what website can I write for John Smith? I've got it. I could pretend that John is the owner of a hair salon. But to say John's hair salon doesn't really sound right. What about Jacques? Sounds plenty gay to me. Okay, let's go find the default Apache website and replace it with one for Jacques. So we will go into the Apache installation folder and navigate our way down to the folder called htdocs. C drive, program files, Apache software, Apache 2.2, htdocs. You should make a note to yourself to remember this folder because all of your future websites absolutely must go in either htdocs or one of its subdirectories. In a future video, I'll show you how you can change that. Well, here's the default website, index.html, and this is another important item. This website and all future websites must be called index.html. In a future video, I'll show you how you can change that too. So I'm sure that you already know that an HTML file is simply a fancy text file. So let's open it up with Notepad and we can rewrite it. I'll just space it out so that I can see what I'm doing. Okay, Jacques' website is going to consist of a title and a photograph. Let's go get the photograph so that we can place it in the htdocs folder. The photo is currently stored in a folder called temp. So we copy and paste it. This is a photo showing Jacques hard at work in his hair salon, so it will be perfect for his website. We rewrite the default website so that it links to the photograph. Then we put in a title for Jacques' hair salon, and we're done. We'll save it and go to Internet Explorer. I will go up to the Favorites bar and hit the 127 Call Home button, and bingo, Jacques' hair salon pops up. And since the title is also a link to the photograph, I'll click on the title, and there's Jacques working hard on a customer in his salon. If you want to go back to the title page, simply hit the previous button in the top left-hand corner of the Internet Explorer web browser, and you can see Jacques' hair salon again. Now I can see that I'm about to run out of time for this video, so let me very quickly mention the last item for today. There are actually 5 different ways to test the Apache Web Server, and we've just seen the first one. In the second method, which is very closely related to the 127 Call Home number, you go up to the address bar of your web browser and type the word localhost. When you hit return, bingo, up pops Jacques' hair salon. That's pretty amazing. How did they do that? Does someone have some fancy algorithm for converting a word into an IP address? Actually, the answer is not nearly as complicated as you might think. And once we see how the conversion is done, we will be ready to launch into a discussion of domain name servers. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Until next time, this is the Grease Gobbler.